We step into weightless in mind, body, and spirit. Today's guest is Dr. Noshene Ranjbar. I can't wait for you to meet her. And the title of this episode is Brain Health in Mind, Body, and Spirit. So this is Season 8, Episode 6. The show is hosted by yours truly, Penn, DO, and this is an exciting 10-part series now in Season 8. Do you believe it? Season 8. And it is presented by Penn Global Visions and Penn Global Medical Group and my super team of super friends and heroes as we explore the worlds of weight loss maintenance, aging in reverse, heart health, optimizing health and well-being. Today's episode is so exciting. It is Brain Health and Mind, Body, and Spirit with our special guest, Dr. Noshene Ranjbar, as I've said earlier. And I want everybody to sit back, listen to our exciting theme music that also has a message. And then we are going to be right back and we're going to jump into today's show.
Weightless, no matter what people say, you're full of greatness. Time you opened up your eyes, you were courageous. If only they could see you going through your paces. It's amazing. Weightless, no matter what people say, you're full of greatness. Time you open up your eyes, you were courageous. If only they could see it going through your paces. It's amazing. Weightless, matter what people say, you're full of greatness. Time you opened up your eyes, you were courageous. If only they could see you going through your paces. It's amazing.
Good morning. Weightless in Mind, Body, and Spirit is brought to you by Penn Global Visions, who bring you Mindset Mastery RX, Weightless in Mind, Body, and Spirit, an online monthly membership program where we learn to pivot in the present. But now, let's return to our host, Dr. Carol Penn, with her super friend guest. Thank you.
All right, welcome back. It is time to meet my dear sister friend and colleague, a hero to me, a superstar, super friend. And you know what I like to do? I like to bring our guests on camera. So while I'm reading their bio and their accolades, you're really picking up on their energetic imprint and getting to see their amazing countenance and even being blessed by the witnessing. So let's bring this glorious human spirit on camera right now. And there she is. There she is. So welcome, Dr. Noshene Ranjbar, who is an associate professor of psychiatry at the University of Arizona College of Medicine, Tucson, where she serves as division chief of child and adolescent psychiatry, training director for the Integrative Psychiatry Fellowship, and medical director of the Integrative Psychiatry Clinic. And we're going to unpack those terms integrative in a moment. In addition, she is also fellowship faculty with the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine. All right. And she is also senior faculty with the Center for Mind Body Medicine, which is how we met. We're going to unpack that as well. Born and raised in Iran, she moved to the U.S. as a teen and completed both undergraduate and medical education at the University of Virginia, followed by internship in family medicine at Middlesex Hospital in Connecticut, and involvement with research at Yale University. She completed psychiatry residency at University of Arizona Child and Adolescent Psychiatry Fellowship at Boston Children's Hospital, Harvard Medical School, and Integrative Medicine Fellowship at the University of Arizona. Her academic interests include integrative psychiatry, physician well-being and burnout, mind-body medicine, and health disparities with focus on Native American and refugee health. She serves as a volunteer psychiatrist for evaluating asylum-seeking individuals with the Arizona Asylum Network and the Florence Project, and is active in the MIND, M-I-N-D Clinic, a free mental health clinic at the University of Arizona serving immigrant and underserved families. Don't you love her already? Let's welcome Dr. Noshene Ranjbar, my friend, and I'm just going to call her Dr. Noshene. Love you so much and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I am thrilled beyond belief to have you. And every time I see you, and amazingly, we just had the opportunity to work together as colleagues in the National Open Training with the Center for Mind-Body Medicine. However, I want to go way back because you weren't always Dr. Noshene. You were Noshene. So how did Noshene go from being Noshene to being Dr. Noshene? What's that story?
Well, I'm just delighted to be sharing my story with you. So yes, I was the little Noshene in Tehran, Iran, growing up in, I think I was 2 years old when the Islamic Revolution happened in Iran. And so I grew up in this new era of, restrictions and prohibitions and not a lot of women doctors for sure. And so, but I do really go back in my impetus for becoming a physician to my mom. They say the mothers are the first teachers of every little child. Hopefully the fathers too, right along with them. But my mom suffered from multiple autoimmune conditions as a young woman. She had been a radiology technician, and they didn't use proper X-ray protection back then. And so she had been exposed to a lot of radiation. And so after she gave birth to me, she came down with multiple autoimmune conditions, in addition to all the adverse childhood experiences she had had that probably contributed to her getting sick. But I grew up following her around on her healing journey. So, one day we're going to the acupuncturist, and one day we're going to the regular doctor, rheumatologist, and one day we're going to the apothecary and getting some herbs for her, new regimen that she was trying, or to the Ayurvedic practitioner where she was starting a new nutritional medicine way to help heal herself. And so I grew up both caring for her because she was so sick and it was just the two of us living together, but also getting exposed to what's out there and what healing could look like, even in a society where there weren't a lot of opportunities to find, the best and the latest science of what could help her. But that's where my early dreams of either wanting to be a singer, a flight attendant, or a doctor. So that's how we got to this. The first two didn't quite work out, but the third one stuck years later.
Oh, well, I tell you what, my experience of you is that you sing songs of love through your work. So I think you can put a check mark next to that. And also you help people find their wings and take flight. So I think you can put a check mark next to that too. Because I've experienced, and your laughter, the sound of your laughter is music to me. So I'm just going to claim all of that on your behalf, if you don't mind. And then I also think what people often want to know is, how did you meet all these cool people? Dr. Carol, what's going on here? And I would like our audience to know how you and I met. It is its own love story. It is its own story about taking flight. So will you, and I'll share people, the first time we didn't meet in a traditional sense where someone said, oh, Carol, I want you to meet Noshene. Noshene, I want you to meet Carol. We were actually at a training when we were participating as participants with the Center for Mind Body Medicine, drawn to the center for our own individual reasons, some of which we'll highlight today because a lot of it came out of trauma. And Dr. Noshene was actually on her knees and she was in tears. It was the first time that I noticed this person who is going to become such an integral part of my life's journey. So let's go back to then. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, what a memory. So I remember being in Arlington, Virginia at this hotel conference center, and I was living in Tucson, Arizona at the time. I was a psychiatry resident at the University of Arizona. I think I was in my second year. And the Gabby Giffords, Congressman Gabby Giffords shooting had just happened. So this was 2011, I think it was January. And our whole hospital had been on lockdown. Obama was being flown in to visit her. And, I remember one day being stuck in the hospital. I couldn't even leave because the doors were locked. And there was mass chaos and trauma in our city. So, the people were trying to create little ceremonies and rituals to honor what had just happened. In my experience, I grew up during the Iran-Iraq war in Iran. So I remember like running into shelters and like feeling the trauma of not being safe. And so every time there's like another shooting, another bombing, another war going on in my adult life, in some ways I can tell my body kind of remembering what it was like to be a little girl and not feel safe. So from all of that in the backdrop, I was signed up to attend this training with the Center for Mind Body Medicine. And so I left my city. I flew over to Virginia, and there I was in this big room with a couple hundred people, and you were I remember exactly at the, one side of the room, and I was on the other side. And, I think it was one of those deeply touching and healing moments for me where, as our audience might know, part of mind body medicine is really about allowing the body to participate in the healing process and allow the movement of emotion and energy so it doesn't get stuck. So we were doing this shaking and dancing activity. And I remember, I think my eyes were closed and they had this fabulous drumming music and I was shaking my body probably for the first time, in a setting with 200 other people. And I realized there was this grief energy that was coming through me. And I just started feeling tears, feeling not just the grief of what I had just left with the shooting of the Congresswoman and the unsafety of my town, but perhaps the history of grief and fear that I remembered from being a little kid and from my history, just moving through my body. And so then it was very interesting. It was very powerful. And so I noticed some tears. And then the second part of the activity was a song that came on. And I'm trying to remember something like "We All Want Peace" or something. It was just a powerful music. And as soon as that started, then it was like yet another layer of tears. But this time it was grief releasing, but it was also joy. It was like hope. It was the feeling of being in community with these 200 people that I didn't know, with Dr. Carol across from the end, which I hadn't met you yet, and many others kind of trying to work through their version of fear, trauma, wanting to feel safe, wanting to belong, wanting to have fun together. So that was what was happening. I felt like, my gosh, I'm having layers of healing going through my mind, going through my body, and I don't even have to say a word. It's just happening, being in company, being with music, being with movement, and being with humans who are on similar paths, even though their backgrounds might be from all over the world, most of whom I don't even know. So that's where I was.
Yes, and and it's one of those. It was almost as if someone took a snapshot and put that inside my brain, because I can see that room like a picture. All these years later, all these years later, I see, our friend and teacher now, Dr. James Gordon, the founder of the Center for Mind Body Medicine. I see him standing there with the mic. I see you, I see the people in the room, and I can almost see myself, you know, in the picture looking across, and was, being across the room from each other, and somehow being aware of that energy, only to find out later that we had actually been paired in the same small group. And at that time, we did not know what was yet to come. So again, powerful little triangle there going on. So we have such a wonderful and engaged audience. So I'm noticing a question here: allowing the body to participate in the healing process. I love the way that resonates with my being. Can you say more and give some possible examples? We're going to talk all about that, but perhaps you can, give a few nuggets now and some examples of that.
Yes. So, one of the ways that I like to understand the relationship between the mind, the body, the brain, the healing process, is to think about little babies, because their bodies come into the world, our bodies come into this world ready to release, to learn, to play, to explore, and to heal. That the incapacity to heal is inherent within each of us, and there are barriers that later we have to overcome, but we come in ready to do that. And so, one of the stories I like to tell is that, when the baby is going from a completely protected, hopefully nourishing, warm womb where everything's taken care of and there's nothing to do or to ask for or to hope for, and then during the birth process comes through all this screaming and pain and chaos, into this new world. It is having to breathe for the first time, and hope somebody will feed them and take care of them and make sure it's warm and all of that. And the body has these inherent mechanisms to release and to transform and to work through whatever that baby is feeling. So the baby screams or cries when it's sad, and it yawns when it's tired, and it shakes when it's afraid, and it makes all kinds of sounds, and then later learns how to play as a way to get into the environment and move through it. And tears, we are now learning, is really one of the many mechanisms that the body uses to release cortisol and stress hormones. So anyway, this little body knows how to move energy, how to move and get its needs met in the environment. And so our bodies are really created through laughter, through tears, through play, through art, through movement, to move energy. And there's a beautiful elder in the native world, Lakota elder, who reminded me that emotion is energy in motion. And so really the body is continuously trying to move energy through breath, through everything that we do. But when we are in fear mode or trauma mode or something horrendous like the Gabby Giffords shooting happening, or something just yesterday, that puts us into that place of fear and frustration and anger and grief, then that energy can stay stuck in the body. unless we move it, unless we have support to help us move it. And so really the body can participate through movement, through shaking, through dancing, through tears, through laughter, through hugs, through connection. It can move what is ready to be released. And sometimes we forget that and kind of stay stuck. So that was a moment for me at that gathering where I noticed my body was fully participating in this transformation of what was old grief, old sadness, old not feeling safe, and finding it in a new way, without even me like thinking about it. I didn't go to that training thinking, oh, I'm going to have, this incredible transformative experience. But sometimes when we allow ourselves to be present, the body just does what it needs to do.
That is so beautifully said. Thank you. So let's see if we can curate this a little bit for our audience and let's see if we can break it down in mind, body, and spirit, when in fact we know these things are happening simultaneously at the same time. But we'll give it a try, see if we could tease it out. So right now, you cannot turn on a television, listen to a podcast, or engage in any type of social media without hearing something about mental health. It's gotten into the popular culture, mental health this, mental health that, and we are in fact in a global mental health crisis across professions, across cultures, across ethnicities, across economic status, you name it. We've been hit 360 with this mental health crisis. You yourself, having lived through the ravages of war and the consequences and the fallout. So you've mentioned where these things were living alive in your body. Right now, with what's happening in the Ukraine, we are seeing that, and they're using that language, trauma-based. The trauma the children are experiencing, the trauma the adults are experiencing, and the impact on mental health. So let's start that. So when we talk about shifting in mind, body, and spirit, and mind, body medicine as it applies to the mind, to mental health, what are we talking about?
The mind is a real powerful thing. And it is impacted in all kinds of ways that sometimes we recognize and sometimes we don't. One way I like to explain it is that, back to the baby in the womb, that the brain and the nervous system needs a lot of nurturance and good nutrition and good healthy relationships and good solid parenting and a good safe community so it can evolve and develop in the optimal way. And so those early years of life from the womb to age 5, 10 up to 25 or so, when the brain and the nervous system is still developing, is the most important time to make sure that that child, that system, is getting what it needs socially, spiritually, nutritionally, community-wise, parenting-wise. And much of the time that doesn't come to be, especially in this modern world where, there is wars and shootings and poverty and, all kinds of things that keep many of those little brains to struggle, with not feeling safe, with not getting the nurturance and the nourishment that they need. And so when, as little kids, we are finding ourselves in situations where things feel out of control, those we hope to care for us and have our back are themselves sick or unavailable or unable to be there for us, then, those adverse childhood experiences, as we call them, over time can take a toll on not just the mind, but also the body. And so then when another hit happens, there's another war, another shooting, another, divorce, another failure, another loss of a job, a breakup, those things can impact us, adding to that earlier lost opportunities or lack of full development of our system. And that can lead to illness. And some of it has genetic basis, and some of it has to do with our environment and upbringing. And some of it has to do with the society and the community we live in, and how loving and nurturing and supportive that is, or how alone and isolated we feel. So all of these things are interplaying in our mental health. And I think as we are becoming more aware of the research around mental health and the brain and the nervous system, we can't hide thinking about and talking about this anymore, because it's not just what we know intuitively from living in this life. We're actually having science back it up. So I'm delighted that it's coming into the mainstream and conversations, so that we isolate less and we talk about it and get help sooner.
Thank you so much for sharing all of what you've just shared. So for now, everyone, I'm going to ask everyone to take a nice deep breath. If you're like me, you're really enjoying the flow of this conversation, and we don't want to interrupt this flow. So we are going to take a pause, and then we're going to get right back to our programming after we hear from our sponsors. Well, beautiful, beautiful. So, Dr. Noshene, that was the mind. And we have been interweaving this into our conversation. Let's take it into the body, because I'm not sure, as one of a minister from my childhood would say, are you hearing me? Are you feeling me on this? Can I get an amen? The impact that these experiences have on our body. And of course, the ACE study, Adverse Childhood Event Study, has had such an impact on the science of that and the understanding of that. But so often people don't understand that we all experience trauma, and that trauma goes into our body. We say, well, I'm not in the middle of a war, but you lost your job. Your paycheck got cut in half. You had an unmet expectation. Dr. Charles Dawson, PhD, says trauma really begins with the experience of a betrayal and the unmet expectation. So let's talk about where these betrayals go, where these microaggressions go, where these unmet expectations go, and how they land in the body.
What a fascinating topic. So, in the field that we now call psychoneuroimmunology, that can be a much larger word, because all of these fields and body parts are all connected to one another. What we're learning is that when we have an experience, say, here I am as a little girl in the middle of a bombing that's going on. So the mind is affected because we go into fear mode and protection mode and what if mode. What if I lose my parents? What if something bad happens? What if I die, or whatever? And so the mind is reacting, the body is reacting. So you can watch people's body language, in the middle of a difficult situation, whether they get protective or they, turn and go away, or they stop looking at, people as reducing their eye contact. So the mind, the body, the spirit, they're all like interacting. Every time there's something that is catching us in our environment that is different from our routines, from what is healthy and normal for us. And so when these events or traumas happen, our hormones are affected, our nervous system is affected, our brain is affected, our ways of trying to cope those patterns are impacted. So say, for me, I have a tendency to go towards eating more during times when I'm stressed, or eating less during times that I'm stressed. And so I may notice those patterns of, going after certain foods, or mindlessly, trying to self-soothe in a way. And so those patterns can impact our body, because they impact our sugar metabolism. They impact, how our body stores fat, for example. They impact our sleep, how restful we're able to release and go to sleep at night. And because eating and sleeping and these activities are absolutely essential to our health and our well-being and our healing, when they're impacted, they also impact, different parts of our body, different parts of our functioning. So it can impact our attention the next day, our ability to pay attention in class, or be on top of it at our job, or we might even become more irritable, and someone says something and we jump at them, and or take it super personally, even though if we were in a restful whole place inside, we'd probably let it slide, or not react to it in such a either taking it personally way or violent way, to like jump at the person and beat them up or whatever. So this is all interacting, and our bodies are a part of it all. And sometimes when these processes and these chronic responses and traumas go on, then you see the development of chronic diseases like diabetes, like depression, like heart disease. And it's not to say that it's like this happens and then this happens, because it's a complex world and there's so many interacting pieces. But generally, if we have a little bit of a genetic tendency towards something, and then we have several of these stresses and traumas, especially early on in life, then over our lifetime, it can really impact us and turn into all kinds of maladies that then takes, an entire healthcare system to try to address, and not very successfully much of the time.
So, in other words, kind of the bottom line, the bad news is you can turn on gene expressions that can result in maladaptive responses and disease processes. However, I also hear kernel of good news in there. You can turn on also gene responses that say, oh, we're going to write a different end to this chapter. We're going to turn on the healing modality. And I'm hearing perhaps we can learn what some of those responses can be, right? Is that what I am hearing?
Yes, that is the emerging wisdom of mind-body medicine, integrative medicine, good medicine, is really to tap into that inherent mechanism that's within us, mind, body, and spirit, that can promote healing no matter what we've been through. And I would say the reason I am here today and I do what I do as a psychiatrist is really the byproduct of being given resources to allow me to go through the healing I needed to go through, and continues, to be a journey, to not be a slave, not be a victim to all of these early experiences that I could not control.
So that brings us right up to the threshold of the spirit. What are some of the approaches that seem to free the spirit when we look through the lens of mind body medicine. And by the way, I want to add for our audience, this is not woo woo. This is now showing up in the scientific literature. I want to underscore that point. So when we talk about tapping into the spirit, maybe, what is the spirit? And from there, how and what perhaps are some of the techniques that we know that seem to free that which we identify as the spirit?
Well, so I love that you mentioned how the science is backing so much of this up now. And the reality is that human beings have found a way to connect with their inherent capacity to heal and work through struggles and tap into their spirit forever and ever and ever. So we have a lot of ancient tribal indigenous wisdom to call on as we figure out how to make it work in this modern world, because we don't have to figure it all out fresh. So, I think about one of my blessings has been working with a lot of the indigenous and Native American people over the past 10 years or so. And some of their cultural wisdom traditions are a great reminder of this, as just about any cultural tradition is a good reminder of this. But just some examples is connecting with nature, tapping into movement and music, and allowing rhythms of nature, rhythms of sound and music, rhythms of movement to re-aliven us, to bring us back to feeling our bodies, to feeling our heartbeat, to feeling our most precious parts of us that can come alive with memories, with beauty, with song, with dance. And so I think of, all the tribal traditions that helped keep dance and movement and music and connection to nature alive for the indigenous American people. Same thing with the African people, the drumming, the dance, the movement, the connection to nature. Eating healthy food, taking care of our body with what we put into our bodies, taking care of ourselves by what we give our spirit and our mind. So, what company we keep, what kinds of programs we watch, what type of meditative activities we do to calm our system. And so those are all feeding us in different ways, and it can look 1,000 different ways depending on what moves us and what community we come from and what roots we have. But there are so many different ways to connect, whether it's through religion or spirituality or music or movement or nature, to reconnect to ourselves.
Oh, I love what you are sharing about all of that, particularly that you bring in the connection to nature and how healing that is, and how that seems to speak to that innate spiritual nature of the human being. So, yes, and the wisdom traditions across so many cultures that go back and highlight that connection. Right now, I've been doing a lot of reading about the concept of regenerative leadership. And in a nutshell, it talks about, what's good for the people, what's good for the planet, and having those two things merge as we go forward and we think about new paradigms for what it means to lead in a pandemic-laden world. I won't use that term post-pandemic because we got several pandemics that are going on, but it seems that we're living large in a world where everything is having global impact. So it's not just climate change in one area; it's climate change all over the globe. It's not just a COVID outbreak in one area; it's a COVID outbreak across the globe. So, thank you for putting that in, and thank you for clarifying in mind, body, and spirit. And now, what is Dr. Noshene doing to nurture herself in mind, body, and spirit?
Well, it looks differently different times of my life and different phases I go through. I would say that one of the most incredible developments over the past year in my mind, body, spirit reconnection and health has been reconnecting more and more with my own roots culturally. So over the past year, I've started to support people in Iran and Farsi-speaking people from Afghanistan and Iran to go through mind-body trainings. And that has opened up this entire world of connection with people that I have, left behind 33 years ago now when I left Iran. And I didn't realize up until this past year how much benefit, how much nurturance, how much joy there can be in being given the gift of reconnecting with one's roots and one's culture. And the many layers of gifts, things I'm reminded of, things that are sources of strength that I had forgotten about because I was so busy going to medical school and, helping so many people and making through one challenge after another. So reconnection with roots has been the medicine for me most recently.
Greetings. I hope you're enjoying the show, brought to you by Penn Global Visions. Our monthly membership program, Mindset Mastery RX, Weightless in Mind, Body, and Spirit, will enhance your wellness toolkit to assist you with pivoting in the times that we are in, and has seats available. If you'd like to get more information, please send an email to info@drcarolpenn.com. That's info, INFO, at drcarolpenn.com. Or if you'd like to register, go to our registration link shown below. Thank you again for coming to this show today, but let's return to our host with her super friend guest, Dr. Carol Penn. Thank you.
And we just have a very few minutes left. So, integrative psychiatry, we heard all about that at the beginning in your bio. I would like people to understand, what is integrative psychiatry? What does that mean? How is it different than traditional psychiatry?
Well, so briefly, integrative medicine, and in the case of psychiatry, integrative psychiatry, is trying to bring wholeness back to these fields. So in psychiatry, historically, we were either way on the extreme of psychoanalysis as the only thing we had to offer to people, to the way other extreme of biological psychiatry, where it's all about, you have this, take this pill, and you have this, take this pill, to really bringing back to the field into encompassing all of the factors that contribute to our illnesses and our health and resiliency, and all the different appropriate measures to help bring about the healing process. So integrative psychiatry can look at both looking at the causal roots of somebody's anxiety or depression or insomnia or ADHD, for example. And while it does that, it can also look at all the different tools that for a given person from a given culture, given belief system, can help that person regain health, whether it be nutritionally or through different mind-body practices, different types of therapies, through movement, through music, through supplements, looking at the nutritional factors that go into brain health. And so an integrative psychiatrist is trained in the most up-to-date evidence for all of these different factors so that they can help create an individualized plan for this given person, given who they are, both their strengths and their struggles, and what they're open to and would like to explore that is best for them given where they're at in this moment.
And finally, I know we're not going to solve this one right now. However, we know that there is a national health shortage and mental health professionals across many aspects of the profession. And yet there is a big need. And we also have the whole issue of stigma attached to mental health issues, mental health behaviors. So in a nutshell, if someone is struggling, or we notice that someone in our lives is struggling, do you recommend that we reach out and call a hotline, or have them call a hotline? And I know this is not the complete answer, but it can be, that little toehold in that could help someone. Or do you have another recommendation?
Absolutely. I think it takes a village to take care of us all. Each of us needs a village. And so the hotline is one of those resources. So when things get to a point where we have no idea what to do and perhaps don't have access to a therapist, a psychiatrist, a whole team of, people to support us, it can be a good first start to not feel alone and to have someone else validate what we're struggling with and give us some resources. It's not going to be the end all be all, but there were times in my life when I needed, someone to be able to hold on to, someone to be able to reach out to for that moment. And that can open the doors to the next thing and the next thing.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's all we have time for. And this has been a masterclass. You've shared so many things that people can do in mind, body, and spirit. Oh, I think it reflects, again, the deeper dive, the ongoing work, the journey that you and I are on as colleagues and friends. I'm so grateful for you, Dr. Noshene. So grateful for your work, the generosity of your spirit. And I hope that you will let me and our listeners know that you'll join us again in another conversation.
I would be absolutely delighted. Thank you, Dr. Carol, my dear friend and colleague.
You are so welcome. I'm going to ask Kenny to play us out, hang out, and meet us in the green room in a few moments. And we will see everybody next Sunday for our next exciting conversation on weightless and mind, body, and spirit with Dr. Carol Penn. Kenny, take it away.
Weightless, weightless. No matter what people say, you're full of greatness. Greatness. Time you opened up your eyes, you were courageous. Courageous. If only they could see you going through your paces. It's amazing